My name is Mary, and this is the story of the day I realized I had never truly belonged in my own family. I came to my sister's wedding. Ellie's with a simple intention to celebrate, smile for a few photos, and play the role of the kind older sister like I always had. The wedding was held at a lakeside resort in Vermont, known for its flower-filled gardens and lavish banquet halls with soaring glass ceilings. As soon as my car stopped at the main gate, a staff member in a black suit stepped out to open the door. I took a deep breath, smoothed the wine-colored dress, the only one I felt suited the fancy event, and smiled as I walked in. I wasn't trying to draw attention or make the day about me. This was Ellie's day, and I had long accepted that I wasn't the favored child. But what I didn't expect was just how cold they could be. As soon as I stepped into the main hall, a receptionist greeted me with a dazzling smile. "Your name, Barry Evans," I said softly. Her smile faltered for a moment. I saw the hesitation on her perfectly made-up face. Her hand flipped through the list a little faster than usual, then stopped. Her eyes narrowed slightly before she looked up. "Here it is. You're placed in the hallway area." I blinked. "Sorry. We're just outside the banquet hall near the coat check area," she said, trying to sound casual. I glanced at the seating chart beside us. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Evans, were seated at the head table. Ellie's close friends and her husband's co-workers all had spots inside under the sparkling chandeliers. And me, I didn't see my name anywhere. "Maybe there's been a mistake," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. She smiled again, this time more awkwardly. "I'm afraid not. This is the assigned spot." My chest burned. I told myself maybe the hall had run out of space. Maybe it was a last-minute error. But then I saw my mother standing next to Ellie, adjusting the veil on her wedding dress. They were laughing, clinging to each other as if nothing at all was wrong. I walked over and kept my voice steady. "Mom, can I talk to you for a second?" My mother, Caroline, didn't even look at me. "Not now. Mary, can't you see? We're busy." I bit my lip. "Just a minute," she groaned, clearly annoyed, but stepped aside. Ellie remained still. Her eyes locked on me with a smile that could hardly be called warm. "I've been seated in the hallway," I said. My mother shrugged, as if that was hardly worth mentioning. "We had to prioritize. Close family. You know that." I clenched my fists. "I am close family." She let out a soft, icy laugh. "Oh, don't make a big deal out of this, Mary," Ellie chimed in, eyes glinting with satisfaction. "I'm sure it was just a mix-up. Nobody meant anything by it. Weddings are hectic." Her voice was sugary sweet, but her look was anything but. I turned to my mother again, hoping for even a flicker of hesitation. But she just sighed. "Don't ruin your sister's big day. Mary, you should be grateful you were invited." The word grateful stuck in my throat like a stone. Grateful to be treated like an outsider in my own family. Grateful to be seated next to the coat rack. Before I could respond, my father, Charles, walked up, his voice low, like he just wanted the moment to pass. "It's just a seat. Sweetheart, don't make it a thing." I stood still. The anger was there, simmering quiet. Not explosive, just something deeper, colder. I smiled an empty one, and turned away without another word. They thought I'd silently take it like always, but this time I wouldn't. I walked slowly out of the main hall, my heels clicking lightly against the cold marble floor. The air in the hallway smelled of silk wedding flowers and something else. Something out of place like me. In my hand was the place card with my name. Mary Evans. Table H. Hallway area. The elegant cursive felt like a slap in the face. I turned the card in my fingers. My palm damp. I had hoped just this once that my family would see me as one of them. But clearly they never had. A soft click came from behind the door to the hall. Opened Mary Ellie's voice, called light, like a greeting, but enough to stop me. I turned. She stood there, arms crossed, her veil fluttering in the cool air, her makeup flawless, her smile anything but kind. "Are you upset?" she asked, with no real concern because of the seating. I gave a dry laugh. "I'm not upset. I'm disappointed." Ellie tilted her hill, her eyes lighting up like she'd just heard something funny. "You're always so sensitive. It's just a seat." "Mary, who even cares?" I bit the inside of my cheek, keeping my voice steady. "You know, it's not about the seat. It's about how this family treats me. It's always been that way." She shrugged. "So what, you still showed up, still wore the pretty dress, still hoped for attention?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping, so only I could hear. "You're desperate for their approval. It's sad." I looked her straight in the eyes. "No. Ellie, what's sad is that you need to tear someone down just to feel loved." That made her pause for a second. But then, as if it meant nothing, Ellie laughed. "You really know how to kill the mood." Like always, footsteps approached behind her. It was Mom, Caroline, with a tense expression, like she'd been dragged away from the party to handle something trivial. "I heard there's some drama out here," she asked, eyes on Ellie, barely glancing at me. I took a breath, telling myself I deserved an explanation. "Mom," I was seated in the hallway. "I'm not some acquaintance or a distant guest. I'm your daughter." She furrowed her brow, then gave a tight smile. "Mary, it's not that I don't value you. It's just there were limited seats inside. I had to prioritize people who are closer." I stood still. "What did you just say, closer to Ellie?" She said quickly. "Aunt Patty, her best friend from college. The people who were there when she was sick. You've always been independent. I never had to worry about you." I let out a laugh so soft, it surprised even me. "You never had to worry about me. And you think that justifies treating me like I don't exist?" Ellie jumped in, her voice syrupy. "Mary, stop it. Mom didn't mean it like that. You're overreacting. You should be grateful you were even invited." That line cut deep. I turned to Mom, looking at her like I was seeing her for the first time. "Do you even realize how grateful sounds when you've made me feel like a stranger in my own family?" She said nothing. No touch. No hug. No apology. A deep voice came from my left. "It's just a seat. Mary." It was my father. Gregory. He stood there with a glass in his hand, eyes fixed on the floor. Still the same avoidance. Like always, I turned to him, speaking slowly. "I don't need you to defend me, but the least you could do is look me in the eye when you speak." He looked up, confusion flickering briefly before fading. Ellie shrugged like I was a stubborn child, ruining the adults' party. "If you're that unhappy, you can just leave." I looked at the three of them. These people I once called family, and suddenly realized maybe Ellie was right. I tightened my grip on my purse and took a deep breath. Something inside me cracked. Not from weakness, but from clarity. If they had decided I didn't belong, then I wouldn't try anymore. And what was about to happen would make sure they never forgot. This night, I walked quickly down the thick carpeted hall, my heels swallowed by the plush silence behind me. The music in the banquet hall played on cheerfully, laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. But it all sounded like it came from another world. A world I was never really invited into. I stopped at a quiet corner, clutching my purse strap like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. Ellie's smirk, Mom's dismissive shake of the head, Dad's distant silence. All of it swirled in my mind like a broken melody. And then a memory returned. Sharp and clear, like it happened yesterday. 3 years ago, I went home for Thanksgiving. The rare occasion when Ellie wasn't around. Off traveling with a new boyfriend in Portugal. The house in Albany felt strangely calm. No loud chatter. No trace of Ellie's overpowering perfume lingering in the air. Mom asked me to go to my old room to find some family photos for a memory album. I nodded, a little relieved to do something that felt meaningful. Or at least included. My room hadn't changed after all those years. The small bed by the window, the old bookshelf, and the high school photos, mostly of me alone. I rummaged through the drawer and found the photo box. But then, my eyes accidentally landed on the small drawer of my mother's vanity. I didn't know why, but I opened it. Inside lay a light brown leather notebook. Resting silently, every page was filled with my mother's handwriting. Grounded, careful letters. I flipped it open, not thinking much until I read the first lines. The first day Ellie went to kindergarten. She didn't cry. She turned around, waved goodbye to me, and ran into class like a brave little doll. I turned the page. Ellie loves the baked pasta I make on Thursday nights. Ellie used to be scared of thunder, but now she's much braver. Ellie's favorite birthday gift was the little nurse outfit I got her when she turned 8. Page after page, year after year, it was Ellie. Always Ellie. Memories, recorded like a private memoir just for her. I began searching like I was trying to prove to myself that I, too, had once been remembered. I flipped each page, scanned every line, but there was nothing. Not a sentence, not a line, not even the name Mary. I clutched the notebook so tightly my knuckles turned white. When Mom walked in, I was still sitting motionless on the floor, the notebook wide open in my hands. "You wrote all of this about Ellie?" I asked. My voice, small but cold. She glanced at the notebook and smiled light as if it meant nothing. I had to remember everything so Ellie wouldn't feel forgotten. She's sensitive. I bit my lip until it bled. "And what about me?" Mom looked at me, her eyes unwavering. "You've always been independent. You didn't need to be written about to be remembered." I nodded, saying nothing more. But something inside me shattered in that moment. A part of my childhood, a part of my hope, and the part of me that longed for my mother's recognition. That memory came back so vividly in the luxurious hallway of today's wedding. Nothing had changed. I was still Mary, the daughter my mother never thought to include in her memory book and didn't think needed a decent seat at her sister's wedding. A chill ran down my spine. Not from the air conditioning, but from the clarity. I sank onto the bench by the window right next to the coat rack. Exactly where they'd planned for me to be. I looked at the name card in my hand, printed in gold script. Then, at my own faint reflection in the glass behind me, the wedding went on. Glimmering lights, white flowers, Ellie's dazzling smile, and her expensive dress. But I sat here on the edge of memory, space and affection. If this was where they thought I belonged, Maybe they'd never truly know me at all. And for the first time, I didn't feel sad about that. I just felt like I was finally stepping out of the shadows they'd cast over me for so many years. And I was ready to face all of it. I stayed still on that bench by the glass. My heart tangled between memories and the present. Everything that had just happened. The way Ellie mocked me. How Mom brushed off my feelings like they didn't matter. Kept playing over and over in my head like a loop with no end. "Mary." A low male voice startled me. I looked up. Standing in front of me was Ethan Bennett, the groom of the day. He wore a tailored tux, his tie slightly loosened, his dark brown hair tousled, as if he'd run his hands through it from stress. In his hand was a champagne flute until I stood up, smoothed my dress, and nodded slightly. "Ethan." He looked at me, eyes narrowing slightly like he was trying to figure something out. "Seeing you sitting here doesn't feel like you." I let out a soft laugh. "Really? Because your family decided I'm not worthy of a seat in the main hall." He said nothing. A heavy silence settled between two people who barely knew each other, yet were sharing a strangely intimate moment. "Mary," Ethan finally said, his voice lower. "Can I ask you something?" I met his gaze. "Go ahead." He hesitated, his hand tightening slightly around the stem of the glass. "Has Ellie ever said anything about me that seemed off to you?" I tilted my head. "Are you asking if I've heard her bad?" "Matthew." "Not just that." He pulled his phone from his inner jacket pocket, looked down at the screen, then shook his head. "It's just lately she's been different. Controlling. Secretive. There are things she doesn't want me to know. And I'm starting to realize something's not right." I paused. Ellie's harsh words during family gatherings still echoed in my mind. But I had never told anyone, partly because I didn't want to cause trouble, partly because I was so used to being dismissed. But something in Ethan's eyes made it impossible for me to stay silent this time. "You might want to brace yourself," I said slowly, "because I don't think you really know who Ellie is." He opened his mouth to respond, but another voice cut in, soft, yet strangely powerful. "And if you're still unsure, then maybe your mother can help make things clear." We both turned. Celeste Bennett, Ethan's mother, stood at the end of the hallway, holding a phone, her eyes locked on her son. She was the kind of woman who made a room pause when she entered. Not because she was loud, but because her presence demanded attention. Today she wore an elegant navy gown, her platinum hair, and a sleek bun, and her eyes sharp enough to see through anything. She walked closer and handed the phone to Ethan. "Look." Ethan took it, his finger swiping across the screen. First, a furrowed brow, then a stunned expression. I saw his hand tremble slightly as he scrolled. I couldn't see the messages, but his expression changed from confusion to anger, then to something deeper. "Broken." "She." Ethan's voice cracked. "She told her best friend she was training me to be the perfect husband. Said I was too predictable, and as long as she stayed sweet in front of you, this house would be hers." Celeste nodded. "There are also messages to her stylist. Ellie said that a few months after the wedding, she'd find a way to make you dependent. And then everything will be mine." That's a direct quote. I looked at Ethan. His face had gone pale, his shoulders tense like he was bracing against an invisible weight. "I can't believe this," he whispered. "Mom, why do you have these messages?" Celeste glanced at me, then answered, "A friend of mine works at the studio Ellie hired her stylist from. They accidentally sent the backup file to my email when I rescheduled a fitting. And I read it. Ethan sank into a chair, still gripping the phone. The air around us felt frozen. I sat beside him, saying nothing. Part of me hurt for him, but another part knew this was the moment when buried truths finally came to light. Celeste stood there, silent for a few seconds, then said gently, "Mary, thank you for not turning away." I gave a small nod. I didn't need thanks. I just wanted the truth not to stay buried. And from here on out, I knew this wedding would no longer go the way they had planned. And Ellie would no longer control everything the way she thought she could. The air in the private conference room on the resort's second floor felt heavy. No one spoke when the door closed behind us. Only the hum of the AC and the faint breeze slipping through a slightly open window. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his eyes blink. Celeste stood behind him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder like the only anchor left. I sat slightly to the right, hands in my lap, trying to stay composed, even though my heart pounded so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. The door opened again. Ellie walked in with my mother. "Caroline." Mom looked confused. But Ellie didn't. She held on to her usual air of confidence. Only now there was a flicker of caution in her eyes and worry. "What's going on here?" Ellie asked, her voice slightly high-pitched, as if she was trying to regain control. "Why are you all pulling people out of the wedding?" Ethan stood up, and the look in his eyes was no longer a shock. It was a cold, clear resolve. He pulled a white envelope from the pocket of his suit jacket and placed it firmly on the table. "You know what this is." Ellie stared at the envelope, saying nothing. "Petition to annul the marriage," he said, his voice unwavering. "And in case you care, I've already signed it." The room fell silent. My mother gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Ellie stepped back, her lips pressed tightly together. "You are joking, right?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Celeste spoke up, her tone sharp as a blade. "We read all of your messages. Ellie, every word you said about Ethan, about me, about this family. There's no denying any of it. I did." "Don't." Ethan cut her off. And for the first time, his voice carried both hurt and fury. "You called my mother a rich old woman who only knows how to write checks. You told your friend you'd have it all under control. 6 months after the wedding, you called me too. Easy to manipulate. Just pretend to be fragile and you get anything you want." "Want me to quote more?" Ellie froze. I looked at my mom. She stood still, her face pale as if she was seeing her daughter's true self for the first time. "Those were jokes," Ellie said, her voice hoarse. "Messages between friends, not serious." Celeste gave a short, bitter laugh. "And what about the divorce consultation you filed last month? Was that a joke?" "Two. That's when I saw my father. Robert. Enter the room, his expression heavy. I didn't know who had called him, but his presence seemed to make the room sink deeper into tense silence. "Is this true?" he asked, looking straight at Ellie. Ellie didn't respond. Robert turned to my mother. "Did you know about this?" Mom shook her head weakly. I didn't think Ellie could do something like this." "You never think," he said slowly. "You've never looked at what's really going on." Then he turned toward me. And for the first time in many years, he didn't avoid my eyes. "Mary," he said, "I'm sorry." Both Mom and I were stunned. I had never heard him say sorry. Especially not to me. I've been silent for too long. Let everything veer off course. He went on. "And I know you were right about Ellie. About everything. I didn't know how to react. Part of me had grown so used to being overlooked that this recognition left me breathless. Ellie snapped out of it. "You're taking her side," she shouted, voice rising. "Your daughter, the one you've always loved, is being turned on by her entire family over a few dumb texts." Ethan gripped the edge of the table. "Don't call them dumb texts, Ellie. That's who you really are. You don't understand," Ellie shouted, her voice trembling. "I love you. I just didn't want to lose the chance to build a stable life." "What's wrong with that?" Celeste raised an eyebrow. "Is that what love looks like, planning a divorce before the wedding even starts?" "She's lying." Ellie spun toward me, her eyes burning. "This is all your fault. If you weren't so jealous, if you didn't poison Mom against me today, wouldn't be ruined." I took a deep breath, staying calm. "Ellie, you did this to yourself. Don't blame anyone else. You've always been the outsider in this family." Ellie screamed, always pretending to be the good one, just to make Mom feel guilty. "What do you want to steal everything from me?" "No," I said, my voice quiet but clear. "I just want the truth to be seen." My mother stepped forward. Then she looked at Ellie for a long time. Confused, hurt, and finally broken. "Ellie," she said softly, "I can't defend you anymore." Ellie stood frozen. Her lips moved like she wanted to say something, but no words could fix anything. "Now," she turned toward me, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in her. Not fear of being caught. Fear because she realized no one was standing by her this time. Ellie stood there in the dead quiet room, breathing hard, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. The carefully applied makeup from the morning was now smudged around her eyes. The pristine white wedding gown that had wowed everyone just hours ago now looked tight, burdensome, stripped of the elegance she had imagined for her big day. She whipped her head toward me, her eyes darkening. "You always wanted to take me down," Ellie hissed, her voice cracking. "You never let me have one peaceful moment. Did you?" I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. But Ellie didn't need a reply. She charged toward me, eyes blazing, her footsteps echoing against the glossy tile floor. "Hey!" I didn't move. I wasn't afraid. And then, in that exact moment, a steady arm slid between us. It was Celeste. "That's enough," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp as steel. Ellie froze, stunned. "Get out of my way. You've caused enough chaos." Celeste replied firmly, "If I let you do one more foolish thing, that would be on me." Ellie panted, eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape or someone still on her side. But no one spoke. No one stepped forward. Ethan leaned against the table, expression unreadable. My father had his head bowed, brow furrowed like he'd just accepted a bitter truth. And my mother, the one who once excused every little mistake Ellie made, stood frozen, clutching her purse strap, eyes rimmed with red. Then Ellie pushed past Celeste, heels clattering against the floor as she stormed out of the room, her long train sweeping behind her through the hallway. I thought she would vanish behind the door. But no, she shoved open the main doors leading back to the reception hall, where soft music still played, where hundreds of guests were laughing, clinking glasses, and posing for photos against a backdrop of pristine white flowers. And when Ellie appeared, breath ragged, hair disheveled, eyes wild, everything stopped. The music faded. Heads turned. Murmurose. Curious. Stunned. Then shocked stares. The rest of us from the conference room followed behind her. No one tried to stop her. No one wanted to. Ellie stood at the center of the reception hall. What was supposed to be the most beautiful moment of her life, now becoming the stage for the downfall of a self-crowned queen. "You think you can humiliate me like this?" Ellie screamed, her voice echoing through the rows of banquet tables and shimmering chandeliers. "I gave everything for today. Months of planning, picking out every single detail, and now over a few messages, a few meaningless words. You're going to destroy me." No one answered. Ethan stepped forward, his gaze steady and unblinking. "No one destroyed you. Ellie, you did that yourself." She shook her head wildly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You love me. Ethan, I did everything for our future." Celeste stepped forward, slow but deliberate. She faced Ellie, her voice chillingly calm. "I once hoped you'd be part of this family, but you never wanted to be a Bennett. You only wanted what we had." A quiet AU rippled through the crowd like a wave. People were beginning to understand. Some guests exchanged glances. A few set their glasses down, their eyes heavy with realization. Ellie glanced around, breath uneven. "She made all of this up," she shouted, pointing directly at me. "Mary's always been jealous of me, always trying to drag me down. She spent her whole life in the background, and now she wants to pull me down with her." I stepped forward, calm and steady, my voice just loud enough to be heard. "I don't need to drag anyone down. The truth carries its own weight." Ellie went silent. The tension was tight, as your all eyes were on her. Even those who had once cheered her on admired her, now just stood there in silence, turned to Ethan, clinging to a final shred of hope. You can't leave me. I'm your wife. We made vows." Ethan pulled the same white envelope from his jacket pocket, the one he'd come prepared with. He held it up in front of Ellie. "This is the annulment contract," he said slowly, his voice calm and cold. And I signed it. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Celeste gently placed a hand on her son's shoulder. "Let's go, Ethan." As they turned and walked away, Ellie stood alone, surrounded by chandeliers and glittering gowns. She had once been the center, the star built on control and appearances. Now it had all crumbled right in front of everyone. A week after Ellie's wedding, I woke up in my small Boston apartment. No wedding flowers. No distant violin music. No judgmental looks or whispered side comments. Just me in silence. My phone buzzed gently on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen. "Mom, the 9th call in 3 days." "Yeah." I didn't answer. I'd heard enough in that conference room, in that reception hall, and throughout a lifetime of quiet endurance. I didn't need a half-hearted apology or a performative hug. I didn't need them to keep acting out a picture-perfect family just to save face. That afternoon, as I was making coffee, a text came through from Mom. "I know you're angry. I can't change the past. But I want to see you have dinner with me. Just the two of us." I stared at the message for a long time. The old me. The me from a few years ago would have said yes immediately. I would have picked out a nice dress, arrived on time, smiled politely, and tried to think of light conversation topics to keep the mood afloat. I would have hoped, however faintly, to hear her say, "I'm proud of you," or simply say my name with genuine warmth. But that girl didn't exist anymore. I put the phone down. No reply. No, anger. Just no longer necessary. That evening I walked along the Charles River, where small lights hung from the railings reflected across the still water. The crisp, early autumn air carried the scent of the breeze and soft laughter from passing strangers. I sat on a stone bench and pulled out an old photo from my wallet. A family picture from Christmas when I was 16. Ellie was in the middle, wearing a bright red dress, grinning ear to ear. Mom sat beside her, resting proudly on Ellie's shoulder. Me, I stood off to the side, half hidden behind the Christmas tree. I stared at the photo for a long time, then gently folded it and tucked it back into my bag. I no longer needed to force myself into a frame. I was never meant to fit in. Another call came through. This time it was my father, Robert. I picked up not because I wanted to, but because I knew he wouldn't call unless it mattered. "Mary," he said, his voice rougher and slower than usual. "I'm not good with words. You know that." I didn't answer. I just listened. But that day when you spoke and your mother saw who Ellie really was, I think for the first time in her life, she understood how alone you've been. A long pause followed. "Whether you forgive us or not, I just want you to know I was wrong. And I know that doesn't fix anything. But I want you to know." I closed my eyes. No tears. No pain. Just a quiet sense of peace. "Thank you, Dad," I said softly. "But I don't need an apology anymore. I just need freedom." That night I went home, pulled out the family photo album from the shelf. I didn't burn it. Tear it up. I just placed it in a box, locked it, and set it on top of the wardrobe. An era had ended, and I didn't need to look back. The next morning, I booked a trip to Maine. A trip I'd always wanted to take, but never let myself because of family gatherings or other invisible obligations. This time, I chose me. I didn't need their forgiveness. I didn't need their validation. And most importantly, I didn't need their love to feel worthy. Because now I knew my worth doesn't come from someone else's gaze. It comes from how I see myself. Family might be where we come from, but it's not always where we belong. Real family is made of those who respect you, listen to you, and don't make you fight just to be seen. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Not to run, but to find yourself. Mary's story is a powerful reminder that not everyone born under the same roof will give you the love and respect you deserve. Sometimes protecting yourself means letting go of the relationships you once thought were unbreakable. Growth doesn't always come from being accepted. It comes the moment you walk away without needing an apology. In real life, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's an act of courage and freedom. What did you think of Mary's story and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, real-life family stories. I sat down on the white-painted wooden chair, facing my parents and my two younger brothers in the familiar kitchen I once considered home. The aroma of pot roast and garlic bread filled the air, evoking memories of family dinners from my childhood. But tonight, something felt different. Nathan and Lucas, my twin brothers, leaned back in their chairs, their expressions triumphant. My parents, David and Margaret, exchanged a quick glance before my mother spoke, her voice carefully composed. "We want to talk to you about an important decision." I set my fork down, feeling the tension rise within me. "We've finalized our will," my father continued, his tone steady but lacking its usual warmth. "And we want you to hear it from us now, so there's no confusion later." Nathan leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest. a smug smirk forming on his lips. To put it simply, everything goes to us. I froze. What? Lucas repeated it, his tone light, as if delivering an unimportant announcement. Mom and Dad are leaving this house, the beach, condo, and all their assets to us. You get nothing. The room suddenly fell silent, except for the distant hum of traffic from the quiet suburban street outside. I turned to my mother, hoping she would deny what I had just heard. But she only gave a small, firm nod. We think this is for the best, she said, clutching the napkin in her lap. You have a stable career, a solid income, but Nathan and Lucas are still finding their way. They need more support. I turned to my father, waiting for an explanation, some sign of hesitation, but he simply stared down at his glass of water. Avoiding my gaze, pain surged through my chest, mixed with rising anger. I had done everything for them. For over a decade, I had paid a large portion of their mortgage, covered countless medical bills, and even helped Nathan and Lucas multiple times when they couldn't handle their own finances. And now this was how they repaid me. So, after everything I've done, you've decided I don't deserve anything. My voice wavered, despite my efforts to keep it steady. But I couldn't hide the deep hurt behind my words. My mother sighed, her eyes filled with disappointment. Evelyn, you always make everything about money. I clenched my hands under the table, taking a deep breath. I studied myself. All right, I said. My voice, even if that's your decision. Then I have one of my own. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Oh, and what's that? I pushed my chair back and stood up, my heart pounding. From now on, I don't expect anything from me. I turned away from the dinner table, leaving behind their stunned expressions. The scent of pot roast and garlic bread, once comforting, now felt empty and meaningless. As I walked out the door, no one stopped me. No one called my name. No hesitation. And I knew in that moment everything had changed. I stepped out of the house I had grown up in. But this time there was no sense of familiarity. No lingering attachment. The warmth of family dinners and childhood security had long faded. The door clicked shut behind me with a finality that couldn't be undone. The night air was crisp, but I felt a burning heat rise to my temples. Driving home, I didn't turn on the radio like I usually did. I needed the silence to process everything. Why was I even surprised? Hadn't I always known that in their eyes, I was nothing more than their financial safety net? Back in my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch, my hands trembling as I unlocked my phone. The conversation replayed in my head, every word cutting deeper. Nathan and Lucas were getting everything. And me, the one who had paid for their mistakes, who had covered Nathan's tuition every time he switched majors, who had sent Lucas money when he wanted a new car for his social media image. I was left with nothing. I opened my banking app. The numbers stared back at me like a brutal reminder. $1. $900 every month. The amount I had been sending to my parents to cover their mortgage and expenses. Another $1. $200 for Nathan and Lucas every time they called complaining about money problems. My parents said I was successful and didn't need help. But what would happen to them without my support? Could they even keep their home? I hovered my finger over the automatic transfer section. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. For years, I had accepted this burden as my responsibility. But this was their choice. They didn't need me. They had made that clear. No one was forcing me to continue. 1 second. 2 seconds. I pressed cancel. A notification popped up. Recurring payments successfully stopped. A wave of emotion crashed over me. Anger. Bitterness. But also something else. Release. I set my phone down, sinking into the couch, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders that I had carried for far too long. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, replaying the past 2 years in my head. The vacations I had turned down to cover their mortgage, the late nights working overtime to send Nathan tuition money, the sacrifices I had made believing they mattered. But now that I needed just 1 ounce of recognition, one sign that I was appreciated, they couldn't even give me that. The next morning, my phone rang nonstop. Ma. I hesitated before answering. Evelyn, did you cancel this month's payment? Her voice was sharp with worry. But she masked it with that familiar tone of disappointment. I took a deep breath. Yes. Mom. Because I realized I don't have to do this anymore. She was silent for a moment. What do you mean? Family supports each other. You know we rely on that money for the bills. I clenched my jaw, keeping my voice steady. Mom, family only matters to you when I'm paying for everything. I've helped for years, but in the end, I still don't mean anything to you. You're being selfish. Evelyn. Her voice rose. Why are you acting this way just because of the will? Everything isn't about money. I laughed, but not out of amusement. Not about money. I was the one paying the bills for you, for this entire family. If money doesn't matter, then why don't you ask Nathan and Lucas to take care of you instead? Silence stretched on the other end of the line. I could picture my mother's face. Angry. Frustrated at being confronted. I can't believe you're acting like this, she finally said. Do? This isn't the Evelyn I raised. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight in my chest. Mom, this is me. But you never really saw me. I hung up before she could say anything else, standing there in my apartment. Emotions swirled inside me. I knew she would call again. Dad might try to. And Nathan and Lucas would definitely jump in with their mockery or accusations. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel obligated to answer. I was no longer the family's ATM. I was no longer the only one carrying the weight. I had let go, and it was the best decision I had ever made. I set my phone down on the table, feeling both weightless and heavy at the same time. Mom had said exactly what I expected, accusing me of selfishness, of betrayal, of abandoning the family. But what she didn't realize was that I had heard those words so many times that they had lost all meaning. I looked around my apartment, suddenly seeing it in a new light. It was no longer just a stopover between work and endless bank transfers to my family. It was mine. The only space where I didn't have to carry anyone else's burdens. I opened my laptop, pulled up my bank statement. The list of monthly expenses stared back at me. Transfers to my parents, to Nathan, to Lucas. A constant reminder of the dependency they had placed on me. Not anymore. I canceled them one by one, each confirmation feeling like a sharp, clean cut from the past. $900 for the mortgage gone. $600 for utilities. Gone. I sat there staring at the screen, which now showed no active recurring payments. And for the first time in years, I felt free. But strangely, an emptiness crept in. I had spent so much time, so much effort, being the responsible daughter, the one who carried what Nathan and Lucas were never asked to. Now, without those obligations, what was I supposed to do with myself? I stood up, poured a glass of water. Sipping it slowly outside the window, the city buzzed on, life moving forward. And yet I felt like I had just stepped into an entirely new world, one where I could set the rules. My phone vibrated. A message from Lucas. "What the hell are you doing? Nathan just told me you cut off the money. Do you think this is funny?" I read it, but didn't reply. A few minutes later, another message popped up from Nathan. "This time you're a traitor. Don't expect anyone in this family to see you as one of us ever again." I smirked. Not because I was happy, but because I finally saw the truth. I was never truly part of this family. I was just their sponsor. I put my phone down, stepped onto the balcony. The night breeze brushed against my skin, cool and refreshing. I took a deep breath. I had done the right thing and nothing would make me turn back. Now, the next morning, my phone rang nonstop. I didn't even need to check the screen to know who it was. Slowly, I picked it up. Mom's voice burst through the speaker before I could even say hello. "Evelyn, what are you thinking?" she nearly shouted, her voice a mixture of anger and desperation. "Why did you cancel the payments? You know we need that money to cover the bills." I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. "Mom, I can't do this anymore. I've helped enough." "Helped? You're abandoning your family. Have you even thought about how this affects us? We sacrificed so much for you. And this is how you repay us." I let out a dry chuckle. "Sacrificed? Do you not see the irony in that, if I owe you for raising me? Haven't I already paid you back by funding this entire family?" Mom hesitated. But then her voice turned sharper. "You've changed, Evelyn. You let money control you." "No. Mom, you let money control you," I replied, my voice surprisingly calm. "But I'm not your personal bank anymore." She exhaled loudly and hung up without another word. I stared at the screen. Then more messages flashed. "Nathan, you're ungrateful. Mom's crying because of you. Lucas, you think you're so smart. You'll regret this one day. Nathan, don't bother showing up at our parents' funeral when they're gone." I read each message, anger bubbling beneath my skin. Not one apology. Not one question about why I had done it. They didn't care how they had treated me all these years. They were just mad because I had stopped funding their lives. The phone rang again. "Dad." This time I let it ring. It kept ringing. It turned off the ringer, then went into my settings off Nathan lock. "Lucas, Mom." Block. The block. Once I was done, I set my phone down, closed my eyes and exhaled. Silence filled my apartment. A rare and unfamiliar peace. No more ringing. No more messages filled with guilt trips. No more manipulation. I stepped onto my balcony, breathing in the crisp morning air. This peace felt foreign, but also incredibly freeing. For the first time in years, I was truly free. 3 weeks passed in silence. No more relentless calls. No more guilt-laden messages from Mom. I began to believe they had finally accepted the truth, that I was no longer their financial safety net. Then, on a Friday evening, a message appeared on my screen. "Family meeting tomorrow at 7 p.m. Don't be late." Short. Cold. No explanation. I looked at my mother's message, feeling a sinking sensation in my chest. A part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, smaller yet persistent, whispered that maybe this was the last chance for things to get better. Maybe after everything that had happened, they truly wanted to have an honest conversation with me. I decided to go. As I stepped into my parents' house, the tension in the living room was suffocating. Nathan and Lucas were already seated on the couch, arms crossed, their expressions cold. My father stood near the fireplace while my mother sat in the armchair, her eyes red and puffy as if she had been crying. Before I could speak, my mother did. "Evelyn, I don't understand you anymore." Her voice trembled. "How much further do you want to go in destroying this family?" I frowned. "What are you talking about?" My father let out a heavy sigh. "You've put us in serious financial trouble. If you keep being stubborn, your mother is going to break down." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So now I'm the reason Mom is exhausted. What about all those years I carried this family financially? She seemed just fine then." Nathan scoffed, shaking his head. "You always make everything about money." "Do you really think the world revolves around you?" Lucas leaned forward, arms crossed in defiance. "Come on. You have a good job, a comfortable life. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? You're just paying the price for being selfish." Their words cut deep. I had come here hoping for a genuine conversation, but all I was met with was manipulation and pressure. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "If this is why you called me here, then don't waste your time. I'm not coming back." My mother's face went blank. "What did you just say?" I stood up, taking one last look around the house. "I have done everything I could to be a part of this family. But if my worth to you is only measured by how much money I bring in, then I don't need that kind of love." No one said a word as I turned and walked toward the door. No one stopped me. I left for good this time. 2 days later, when I returned to my apartment late at night, I immediately sensed something was wrong. My front door had been sealed shut with industrial foam covering the door frame and handle. I reached out and touched the hardened material. Solid and cold. Someone had done this on purpose. I took a step back, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. This wasn't some harmless prank. This was an intentional act to keep me out of my own home. Without hesitation, I grabbed my phone and checked the hallway security camera. I fast-forward through the footage from earlier that evening, and then there it was. Lucas, wearing a baseball cap and a hoodie, but his posture and stride were unmistakable. He smirked as he held the foam spray cans, carefully filling every crack and crevice of my door. My hands trembled with rage. I didn't hesitate. I called the police. When the officers arrived, I handed over the footage as evidence. One of them nodded as he watched the video. "You want to press charges?" I gripped my phone tightly, a chill running down my spine. If I let this go, it would only escalate. Lucas wasn't just angry. He was willing to cross the line to retaliate. I took a deep breath, my gaze firm. I want him held accountable. The next day, my phone rang again. I ignored it. Then Dad. Then Nathan. Finally, I picked up Evelyn. "Your brother got called in by the police." "How could you do this to your own family?" My father's voice was harsh, but I responded calmly. "Lucas vandalized my property. If he doesn't want to face charges, he needs to pay for the damages." My father's tone dropped. How much? I didn't hesitate. "San Ling, how could you extort your own brother like this?" I let out a dry chuckle. "It's not extortion, Dad. It's called consequences." The next morning, my account received a $3. Zero transfer, with a bitter note attached. "I never want to see you again." I read the message and felt nothing. A notification lit up my phone. A message from a distant relative. "Evelyn, Is this true? People are saying you abandoned your family even though they're struggling. I frowned. Another message came in. Evelyn, how could you cut off your parents and brothers like this? They took care of you. Your whole life. I opened social media and immediately understood what was happening. My mother had been spreading a completely false story. She had written a long Facebook post claiming that I had turned my back on my family in their time of need, that I was selfish, only cared about myself, and had left my aging parents and struggling brothers with nothing. People who didn't know the full story flooded the comments, offering sympathy to her and vilifying me. I scrolled through the responses. So sad. When successful children forget where they came from, parents sacrifice everything for their kids. And this is the thanks they get. Evelyn must have let money get to her head. Anger flared in my chest. Not because of the strangers passing judgment, but because my own family had rewritten the narrative, turning me into the villain. They didn't mention that I had paid the majority of my parents' mortgage. They didn't say that I had covered tuition, bills, and even personal expenses for Nathan and Lucas. They left out the fact that Lucas vandalized my apartment and that I had to call the police to protect myself. They only painted the image of a heartless daughter who turned her back on her family. I sat in silence for a few minutes thinking, should I stay quiet, ignore everything, and let them control the narrative? No. I had endured their manipulation for far too long. I opened my app and tapped on New Post. If my family wants to make this public, then let me tell the truth. And I started writing. I laid it all out. Every dollar I had sent over the past 10 years. The money I had spent to help them keep their house, pay for tuition, even the funds Nathan and Lucas used for new cars and vacations. I spoke about how they had always seen me as an ATM, not as a daughter or a sister. I exposed how Lucas had sealed my apartment door with industrial foam, forcing me to involve the police. I didn't turn my back on my family. My family never saw me as part of them, unless I was bringing in money. And now I choose to stand up for myself. I hit post. Within hours, my post caused an uproar. Relatives started asking questions. Some commented, surprised, because they had never heard these things before. An aunt messaged me privately, asking if it was true that I had financially supported my family for years. Some extended family members even began calling out my mother for twisting the truth. But the strongest reaction came from my immediate family. Mom called immediately. I answered. Her voice was so furious she was nearly incoherent. Evelyn, what the hell did you just do? I remained calm. I told the truth. Mom, if you have the right to tell your version, so do we. She was breathless. You're humiliating this family. Your father is so ashamed he won't even leave the house. Have you thought about how this makes Nathan and Lucas feel? I clenched my phone tightly. Did they think about how I felt when Lucas vandalized my home? Did they think about me when I was breaking my back to pay their bills? She went silent. But then, as always, she twisted the situation. You're destroying this family. Her voice grew cold. If you do this, don't expect to come back. We are no longer family. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Mom, you destroyed this family. Not me. And I hung up. No tears. No regret. For the first time in my life, I felt relief. I had lost my family. But maybe they were never truly my family to begin with. That phone call with my mother was the last time I heard her voice. After my post, my family went completely silent. No more angry messages from Nathan. No more furious calls from my father. All contact was severed as if I had never existed to them. But this time, I didn't feel guilty. I was free. At first, the silence felt unfamiliar. The evenings I used to spend solving my family's financial problems were now mine. No more desperate late-night calls. No more canceled plans because someone needed my help. I threw myself into work, channeling my energy into a major project my company was developing with laser focus. I not only completed it ahead of schedule, but also secured a promotion. On the day I received my promotion letter, I stood in my new office, looking out over the city, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, feeling proud. For the first time in my life, I could enjoy my success without feeling obligated to share it with anyone. And then I decided to travel. I had always dreamed of taking a long trip, but every time I thought about spending money on myself, I was pulled back into my responsibilities. But now nothing was holding me back. I booked a ticket to Italy when the plane landed in Florence. I felt like I was stepping into an entirely new world. The cobblestone streets, the outdoor cafes filled with the scent of espresso, the historic buildings whispering stories of the past, it all made me feel more alive than ever before. I wandered through Florence's narrow alleyways, spent hours in museums marveling at Renaissance paintings I had only seen in books. I ate the freshest pasta of my life, sipped rich red wine as the sun set over the terracotta rooftops. I was no longer the person who constantly worried about others. I was no longer my family's bank account. I was just me. One late afternoon, I was sitting in a small cafe near Piazza della Signoria, enjoying a hot cappuccino. "You seem to really like this place." I looked up, meeting the warm gaze of a stranger. He had light brown hair, a relaxed smile, and an effortless confidence. "I think I just fell in love with this city," I replied with a small smile, taking a sip of my coffee. He pulled out a chair and sat across from me without asking, as if we had known each other for years. "Me too," he said. "This is my third time coming back." I raised an eyebrow. "A loyal traveler. You could say that." "My name's Alex. Evelyn." We talked for a long time. He was from New York, worked in interior design, and had a deep passion for European architecture. His voice was calm, steady, sometimes laced with effortless humor. I couldn't remember the last time I had talked to someone without pressure, without tension. With Alex, there was no pretense, no expectations, just a simple chance encounter, a genuine connection between two strangers. As I stood up to leave, he smiled. "If you ever want company while exploring Florence, I'd be happy to join you." I hesitated for only a second before nodding. "I think I'd like that." The next few days felt like a dream. Alex and I wandered through local markets, sampled gelato, and walked along the Arno River as the golden sunset painted the sky. "You didn't ask about my family." He didn't probe into my past. He just saw me for who I was. In this moment, a woman finally embracing her freedom for the first time in my life. I felt valued, not for my money, not for my responsibilities, but just for being me. One evening, as we sat on a rooftop terrace, I gazed at the glowing city lights and smiled to myself. I had once believed that my happiness depended on my family. I had once thought that if I gave enough, they would love me the way I wanted to be loved. But the truth was, I didn't need to beg for love from people who never truly valued me. I could create my own happiness. And right here, under the Italian night sky, I knew I was doing exactly that. After returning from Italy, I stepped back into my life, but with an entirely new mindset. I was no longer the Evelyn who sacrificed everything for a family that never appreciated her. I was stronger, freer and more myself than ever before. The months that followed were peaceful. Work thrived. I joined Sunday yoga classes, met new friends, and finally embraced the life I had put on hold for too long. But then news about my old family started to surface. I was making coffee when my phone buzzed. A message from Aunt Linda. My mother's cousin Evelyn. I know you don't care about the family anymore, but your parents are really struggling. Your father is working night shifts at a warehouse, and your mother is taking hourly cleaning jobs. They both look exhausted. I paused for a moment, staring at the screen. I had seen this coming when I was financially supporting them. My parents never once considered standing on their own. They relied on me as a lifeline, never stopping to think if I was tired. And now that I had cut them off, they were forced to face reality. I set my phone down without replying. A few days later, I heard from a friend that Nathan had lost his job due to poor performance, and Lucas was still chasing his dream of becoming a social media influencer, but getting nowhere. I wasn't surprised, and I no longer felt responsible for them. They had the chance to change, to learn independence, but they didn't. And now they had to face the consequences of their own choices. I once thought that not spending Christmas with my parents and brothers would make me feel lonely, but as the holiday approached, I realized that I had people who truly cared about me, and that was what mattered most. I decided to host a small gathering at my apartment, and Daisy arrived early, carrying a box of homemade cookies and a warm hug. "I'm so proud of you, Evelyn," she said as I welcomed her in. I smiled. "You're the only person in the family who's ever said that to me." Daisy looked at me, her eyes filled with both understanding and sadness. "I just wish they had realized your worth before it was too late." I didn't respond. Instead, I poured her a glass of wine and invited her inside. One by one, my friends arrived, bringing wine, desserts, and laughter. That entire evening, I laughed more than in any Christmas before. No forced conversation means no pressure to meet anyone's expectations. Just me being happy on my own terms. As the clock struck midnight, I stood on my balcony, gazing at the twinkling Christmas lights across the city, and felt something I had never truly felt before. Please, no more invisible burdens. No more feeling used. Just me, my life, and the people who truly loved me for who I was. And that was the greatest Christmas gift I could ever receive. I sat in my armchair watching the city lights reflect against my window outside. The world kept moving, cars and people filling the glowing streets. But inside me, there was a stillness I had never known before. I had once believed that family was everything, that I had an obligation to sacrifice for them, no matter how they treated me. I had convinced myself that if I tried hard enough, if I gave enough, they would finally accept and love me. But the truth had been far different. Family isn't defined by blood alone. Family is made up of those who appreciate you, those who don't take advantage of you, those who love you without conditions. And my parents, Nathan and Lucas, they had never truly seen me as family in that way. I thought back to the way they cut me out of the will, as if to make a final statement that I was worth nothing to them except for my money. They believed that would break me, that I would beg for their acceptance again. But what they didn't realize was that they had unknowingly given me the greatest gift of all. They had severed the last remaining tie between us. They had set me free. I had once been a woman burdened by responsibility, expectations, and sacrifices that were never appreciated. But now, I had the power to choose my own life. I could go anywhere, do anything, and never again worry about a call demanding money or a guilt trip for not obeying their wishes. I could spend my time with people who truly loved me, friends who stood by me even when I had nothing left to give. Aunt Daisy, who had quietly supported me all along. I could love and be loved freely in a way I had never experienced before. My eyes drifted to my phone on the table. There were no missed calls from my family. They had let me go, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of that. I picked up my glass of wine, taking a slow sip, letting its warmth spread through me. I had once lived for my family. Now, I chose to live for myself. And that wasn't selfish. That was freedom. Evelyn's story isn't just personal. It reflects a reality that many people face in society. We grow up believing that family is the safest place. That love always comes with responsibility. But the truth is, family bonds don't always mean appreciation. Sometimes, walking away isn't selfish. It's the only way to protect yourself. When you are constantly being used, when your sacrifices go unrecognized, you have every right to put yourself first. Because in the end, this life is yours. What do you think about Evelyn's story? If you were in her position, would you keep sacrificing for family, or would you walk away to find yourself again? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel so you don't miss more meaningful stories about life and family.